It started with a storm, 3 men gone without a trace, and one question that has haunted this corner of the sea for almost a century. What really happened inside the Flannan Isles lighthouse? The facts are simple. On December 15, 1900, a violent gale swept across the remote Flannan Isles off Scotland's western coast. When it passed, the lighthouse on Island Moor stood dark against the sky, its light extinguished, its 3 keepers vanished. No bodies, no distress signal, no explanation. But when a modern-day diver, unaware of the legend, finds something on the seabed that connects back to that same night, the mystery twists into something far darker. As we uncover the clues that were ignored, you'll learn about the warning signs, signs that could have saved them, one of which might still be happening today. The sea doesn't surrender its secrets easily. When Captain James Harvey guided the supply vessel Hesperus toward Island Moor on December 26, 1900, he expected the usual greeting, 3 lighthouse keepers waving from the landing. Instead, he found silence. The flagstaff bare, the provision box unopened, the island as still as death. As the Hesperus fought the waves, first mate Joseph Moore volunteered to investigate. The island was small, barely 500 feet across, with nothing but the lighthouse perched atop its highest point. Moore climbed the steep path, calling out names that echoed back without answer. "Thomas! James! Donald!" The lighthouse door was unlocked. Inside, the clock had stopped. A chair lay overturned near the kitchen table, as though someone had stood in haste. 2 oilskin coats were missing from their hooks. One remained untouched, waiting for a man who never returned. In the logbook, the final entry read, "Storm ended, sea calm, God is over all." The handwriting changed halfway through, became unsteady, then stopped mid-sentence. By all appearances, Thomas Marshall, James Duckett, and Donald MacArthur had simply evaporated. No footprints led away from the lighthouse. No boats were missing. The surrounding cliffs showed no signs of accident or struggle. 3 men, gone. As though the island itself had swallowed them whole. The official investigation would conclude what seemed most logical, that a massive wave had swept the men away while they secured equipment on the western landing. A tragic accident, nothing more. Case closed. But that explanation left too many questions unanswered. Why would all 3 men, experienced keepers who knew protocol demanded one always remain with the light, abandon their post during foul weather? Why was the kitchen table set for a meal no one ate? And if a wave powerful enough to claim 3 grown men had struck the island, how did it leave everything else? The delicate glass lenses, the china plates, the furniture, perfectly intact. It doesn't make sense, Angus Mackenzie, the Northern Lighthouse Board investigator, wrote in his private notes. Something here feels unnatural, as though we're seeing only half the evidence. He would never know how prophetic those words would become. Skye, Scotland, July 1990. Callum Fraser checked his dive equipment one last time. The North Atlantic wasn't forgiving of carelessness. "You're certain about this wreck?" Dr. Moira Ainsley asked, looking out across the choppy water toward the barely visible silhouette of Island Moor. "The Maritime Commission says visibility is poor this week." "The HMS Triumph has been down there since 1942, Callum replied, securing his air tank. "Another week won't change much." What he didn't say was that he needed this. Needed to be underwater, in that perfect silence where memories couldn't follow, where his father's face, another lighthouse keeper lost to these same waters 25 years ago, wouldn't haunt him between heartbeats. Moira knew better than to argue. As the expedition's marine archaeologist, she understood obsession. Just stay within range of the communication line. These waters have a history of complications. Callum nodded. He'd grown up with stories of the Flannan Isles, whispers of vanished keepers, of voices carried on the wind, folk tales to frighten children, Nothing more. At least that's what he'd always told himself. 30 meters down, the world narrowed to what his flashlight could capture. The HMS Triumph, a cruiser sunk during German air raids, lay scattered across the seabed like the bones of some prehistoric creature, metal twisted by depth and time. Steel plates consumed by rust and marine growth. Callum moved methodically, mapping wreckage sections for the Underwater Heritage Project. Cold penetrated his wetsuit as he photographed the ship's remains, a gun turret, navigation equipment, personal effects abandoned during evacuation. Then his light caught something that didn't belong. Beyond the wreck, partially buried in silt, lay an anomaly, a smooth metallic surface untouched by corrosion or marine growth, too clean, too new. Callum approached cautiously. His training told him to document, not disturb. But curiosity pulled him forward. The object was round, perhaps 3 meters in diameter, not part of the Triumph, not military at all. He brushed away sediment, revealing what appeared to be a circular window embedded in the structure, and beneath his gloved hand, a small brass plate, its inscription still legible despite decades underwater. D. MacArthur, Flannan Isle, 1900. Callum's heart hammered against his ribs. Donald MacArthur, one of the vanished lighthouse keepers. But how? Why would a personal item from 1900 be here, alongside a WA-2 wreck? And what was this structure it was attached to? He shifted position, directing his light through the circular window. What he saw made him jerk backward, tangling in his lifeline. Inside the structure were shadows, human silhouettes, suspended as though frozen mid-motion. One figure reaching toward the glass, two behind. All perfectly preserved, as though time itself had stopped around them. Callum's breathing accelerated dangerously. It couldn't be. He was seeing things. Nitrogen narcosis playing tricks on his mind. But as he steadied himself, his light caught something else through the murky glass. A face, eyes open, mouth forming words, alive, yet not. The communication line crackled in his ear. Moira's voice, distant through water pressure. "Callum? Your readings are spiking. What's happening?" He couldn't answer. Couldn't look away from those eyes. Eyes he somehow recognized, though he'd never seen them before. The face behind the glass shifted suddenly, turning fully toward him. Its lips moved, forming syllables Callum couldn't hear but somehow understood. "They're coming back." Darkness closed in from the edges of his vision. Callum felt the pressure in his ears build to a thunderous roar as consciousness slipped away. His last thought before blackness claimed him was simple, terrifying clarity. The lighthouse keepers never left the island. They're still there, watching. And now, they'd seen him too. Decompression sickness, the doctor explained 2 days later in the Portree Hospital. "You surfaced too quickly." Callum stared at the ceiling, throat raw from the oxygen mask. "I found something down there." Hallucinations are common with... Not hallucinations, evidence. He pushed himself upright. Donald MacArthur's nameplate, a structure that shouldn't exist. "I need to go back." Dr. Ainsley, who'd been silently observing from the doorway, stepped forward. "Callum, I've reviewed your camera footage." "Then you saw it." Her expression darkened. "The footage shows the wreck, nothing more. Just coral formations and sediment beyond the Triumph's hull." "That's not possible." Panic edged into his voice. "I was there. I touched it." "The maritime authorities have restricted diving around Island Moor," she continued carefully. "Environmental concerns." "Bullshit." Callum's hands clenched around the hospital sheet. "They're hiding something. Someone needs to know what's down there." Moira's gaze softened. "You're not the first, you know. In '65, another diver claimed to find evidence of the keepers, And in 78, a fisherman reported lights moving beneath the water. Realization struck Callum like physical pain. My father, when he disappeared, he was investigating the same area. She nodded slowly. That's the real reason you took this assignment, isn't it? The room seemed to contract around him. 25 years ago, his father, a lighthouse keeper turned marine researcher, had vanished during a routine inspection near the Flannan Isles. No body recovered, no explanation given. Just another tragedy swallowed by the sea. Callum had been 18 then, old enough to recognize the emptiness in official reports, the way investigators avoided his mother's eyes. Something had been hidden. Something was still being hidden. I need to know what happened, he said finally. To all of them, Moira's expression suggested she'd expected this. There's someone you should meet first, a local historian named Angus Shaw. If anyone knows the truth about Island Moor, it's him. Angus Shaw lived in a cottage overlooking Loch Poolteal, its walls lined with maritime charts and old photographs. At 78, his hands shook slightly as he poured tea, but his eyes remained sharp beneath bushy eyebrows. So you've seen them, he said without preamble. Not a question, a statement of fact. Callum exchanged glances with Moira. Seen what exactly? The keepers. Shaw settled into a worn armchair. The sea takes payment for every truth it gives, Mr. Fraser. Are you certain you want to pay that price? My father already did. Shaw nodded slowly. Robert Fraser, good man, asked too many questions. He pulled a leather-bound journal from a nearby shelf. Like you, he found something in the water near Island Moor. Like you, no one believed him. What did he find? Evidence that what happened in 1900 wasn't an accident or a wave. Shaw opened the journal, revealing handwritten notes and sketches. It was something older. Something that existed before the lighthouse, before people. Something that didn't want to be seen. Callum's patience thinned. What are you talking about? The whispering wind. Shaw tapped a yellowed page. That's how it starts. The keepers reported it in their logs, voices carried on the air, not human, not quite. Thomas Marshall wrote that Donald heard them first, praying constantly for weeks before the end. He flipped to another page. Then came the gaps in time, hours missing from logs, entries repeated, as though reality itself was slipping. Moira leaned forward. Time distortion is a documented effect of isolation. So is the Northern Lights, Shaw countered, but that doesn't mean they're not real. Callum studied the journal. His father's name appeared repeatedly in the margins. Notes, observations, questions. You were helping him investigate? Warning him more like? Shaw's voice dropped. The lighthouse wasn't the first structure on Island Moor. Before Christians built a chapel there, it was a place the old ones avoided. A place where the boundary between worlds thinned. Boundary between what? Shaw didn't answer directly. In the final days, Marshall wrote about a stranger standing outside the lighthouse. On an island no one could have reached during those storms. A figure watching them. And then, silence. Ghost stories, Callum said dismissively, though something cold settled in his stomach. Perhaps. Shaw closed the journal. But answer me this. If a wave powerful enough to sweep away 3 men hit that island, why was nothing else disturbed? Why did the next crew report hearing the same voices? And why does the Northern Lighthouse Board still refuse to release the full records? Silence filled the cottage, broken only by the distant cry of seagulls. Your father believed the keepers found something beneath the island, Shaw continued. A passage or structure, something older than human memory. He theorized they were taken, preserved somehow, neither dead nor alive. The brass nameplate flashed in Callum's memory, the faces behind glass. And you think I've seen evidence of that? I think whatever took them in 1900 took your father in 1965, and I think it's seen you now. Moira shifted uncomfortably. This is absurd. Is it? Shaw looked directly at Callum. You've been hearing things since you surfaced, haven't you? Voices just at the edge of understanding, a humming that follows you into sleep. Callum felt his throat constrict. He hadn't told anyone about the sounds. Low, rhythmic vibrations that seemed to emanate from the walls of his hotel room, from the pipes, from the very air. It's coming for you next, Shaw said quietly. The island remembers those who've seen its secrets. That night, Callum dreamed of drowning, not the panicked thrashing of oxygen deprivation, but something slower, deliberate, water filling his lungs like knowledge, painful but necessary. In the dream, he was both observer and victim, watching himself sink toward a light glowing beneath the waves. A structure waited below. Inside it, 3 figures. Behind them, a shadow larger than the structure itself, watching. One of the figures, Donald MacArthur, he somehow knew, pressed a hand against the glass separating them. His mouth formed words Callum couldn't understand. A warning, perhaps, or an invitation. Then the dream shifted, and it wasn't MacArthur anymore, but his father, younger than Callum remembered, eyes wide with recognition and fear. You shouldn't be here, his father's lips formed. None of us should. The shadow behind him expanded, consuming light, reaching. Callum jerked awake, sheets soaked with sweat. The bedside clock read 3:17 a.m. From the bathroom sink came a rhythmic tapping, 3 beats, then 2, repeated, like code, like a message. He stumbled from bed following the sound. The mirror above the sink had fogged, though the room was cold. In the condensation, finger marks were visible, lines drawn by an invisible hand, numbers, coordinates. Callum's hand trembled as he copied them into his phone. When he looked back at the mirror, the fog was gone, the surface clear, as though nothing had happened. But the tapping continued now from the walls, from the floor, from everywhere at once. 3 beats, 2 beats, insistent, demanding. We are still here. Dr. Ainsley was reluctant to continue the investigation after Shaw's warnings, but curiosity outweighed caution. The coordinates from Callum's mirror led to a precise location, not near the Lighthouse Island as expected, but to deeper water between the Flannan Isles and the Scottish mainland. This makes no sense, she said, studying the nautical charts. There's nothing there, just open water, 120 meters deep. There's something, Callum insisted. The dreams. Keep showing me. Dreams aren't evidence. My father's notes are. He pulled out photocopies Shaw had provided from the old journal. He tracked similar coordinates in 65, reported unusual sonar readings, cold spots, magnetic anomalies. Moira's scientific skepticism warred with her growing concern for Callum's mental state. Even if something is there, diving that deep requires specialized equipment, authorization. We can't just... I've chartered a boat. Callum's expression was set. With or without you, I'm going back. She recognized the determination in his eyes, the same look Robert Fraser had worn in photographs, the same stubborn drive that had led to his disappearance. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly for the first time in 25 years. Callum gathered his notes. My father wasn't crazy. Neither were the lighthouse keepers. They all saw something, and instead of believing them, people buried the truth. What truth? That we're not alone. He met her gaze steadily. That whatever's down there has been watching us for a very long time. The boat Callum chartered was small, but equipped for deep-water exploration, a research vessel borrowed from an old university colleague who asked no questions. By dawn, they were underway, the islands of the Outer Hebrides fading behind them as they moved toward open water. Moira had insisted on coming. "Someone needs to document this properly," she'd said, though Callum suspected her presence was more about preventing him from disappearing like his father than scientific rigor. Shaw had declined to join them. "The sea already knows my face," he'd said cryptically. "Best not remind it." As they neared the coordinates, the weather shifted. Clouds thickened overhead despite forecasts of clear skies. The wind, previously gentle, began to howl across the water, familiar, expectant. "We should turn back," Moira said, watching the darkening horizon. "Storm's coming." Callum shook his head. "We're almost there." He pointed to the sonar display where an anomaly had appeared, a perfect circle rising from the seabed, too regular to be natural formation, too large to be wreckage. "That shouldn't be there," Moira whispered, scientific objectivity temporarily forgotten. "But it is?" Callum prepared his equipment, a specialized diving system designed for deeper exploration than his previous attempt. "And I'm going to find out what it is." "Callum, listen to me. Whatever's down there has claimed at least 4 lives we know of. The keepers? Your father? I have to know." His voice broke slightly. "Don't you understand? I've lived with questions my entire life. About what happened to him. About why no one would tell us the truth." Thunder rolled across the water, though no lightning was visible. "I'll maintain communication the entire time," he continued, checking oxygen levels. "If anything seems off, I'll surface immediately." Both knew it was a lie. Nothing about this was safe. Nothing about it was rational. But sometimes, truth demands irrational choices. The descent was different this time. The water felt aware. Currents shifted around Callum not like natural movement, but like fingers testing his presence. The darkness below seemed to reach upward, welcoming him. At 80 meters, his lights revealed it. A perfect dome rising from the seabed, metallic. But unlike any material he recognized, no growth covered its surface, despite decades, perhaps centuries, underwater. It simply existed, untouched by time. "Callum, I'm getting strange readings up here." Moira's voice crackled through his communication system. "The water temperature around you is dropping rapidly." He barely registered her words. The structure drew him forward, familiar yet alien. A series of circular ports, windows or possibly entrances, lined its circumference. Through them, faint illumination pulsed like heartbeat. "Callum, your vital signs are fluctuating. Respond, please." The nearest port was large enough to enter. Logic screamed against it, but Callum was beyond logic now. He was beyond fear. There was only the pull, the certainty that answers waited inside. As he approached, the port dilated open, water rushing in. Not mechanical movement, more like muscle, like breath. "Callum, your oxygen levels are critical. Surface now." The communication cut to static as he crossed the threshold. Inside, the structure was larger than its external dimensions suggested, a physical impossibility that registered distantly in Callum's mind. The central chamber was circular, walls lined with what appeared to be glass tanks. And in those tanks, people, dozens of them, suspended in clear fluid, perfectly preserved. Men in outdated clothing, sailors, fishermen, lighthouse keepers from different eras. Women too, though fewer. Children, all with eyes open, all conscious. One face he recognized immediately from photographs. Thomas Marshall, principal keeper of Flannan Isle Lighthouse, 1900. Beside him, James Ducat. And further along, Donald MacArthur, whose nameplate Callum had found near the Triumph. They watched him, recognized him. And there, impossibly, Inevitably, his father, Robert Fraser, unchanged from the day he'd vanished, eyes tracking Callum's movement with painful recognition. A voice filled Callum's mind, though no one spoke aloud. We tried to warn them. Images flooded his consciousness, memories not his own. The lighthouse keepers discovering a hidden cave beneath Island Moor, a passage leading deeper, an ancient structure partially exposed by storms. Their curiosity, their descent. We all came looking. We all found it. More images. His father discovering similar evidence decades later, following the same path, the same fate. It learns from us, takes us, keeps us. The water around Callum thickened, became gelatinous. His limbs grew heavy, unresponsive. It's been here longer than humans. It will be here after, watching, learning. A presence filled the chamber. Not physical, but overwhelming, ancient, patient, curious about these temporary creatures that built lights against darkness, that defied natural order with technology and reason. It had no malice, no hatred, only interest. The way a scientist might study insects, the way a child might collect butterflies, preserving, observing, forever. Callum felt himself being drawn toward an empty tank, his body no longer his own, another specimen for the collection. We belong to the Watcher now. He tried to fight, but muscles refused commands. The world narrowed to the tank opening before him, fluid, reaching out like welcoming arms. Join us. Through rapidly fading consciousness, Callum heard a new sound, explosions, vibrations. The structure around him shuddered, the presence recoiled, surprised, pained. The tank before him sealed shut. The grip on his body loosened momentarily. Callum seized the opportunity, forcing leaden limbs to move, to turn, to swim. The port remained open, darkness beyond promising either escape or death, better than eternal observation. Behind him, dozens of eyes watched his retreat, not with hope, but with something worse, the knowledge that escape was temporary. It always finds those who've seen. Callum burst through the opening into water, suddenly churning with debris. Above, lights penetrated the darkness, searchlights from ships, the concussion of depth charges. Moira. She'd called for help. As consciousness faded, Callum saw the dome beneath him pulse once, then sink deeper into the seabed, disappearing from view, hiding, waiting, not destroyed, never destroyed, just watching from somewhere else now. Recovery was slow. Physical injuries, decompression sickness, oxygen toxicity, hypothermia, healed faster than the psychological trauma. Weeks passed in the Glasgow hospital before Callum could speak coherently about what he'd seen. No one believed him. Not the doctors. Not the maritime investigators. Not even Moira, who attributed his experience to nitrogen narcosis and extreme stress. The official report cited equipment malfunction and underwater currents. The structure he described was dismissed as hallucination. The dome, the tanks, the preserved people, all products of oxygen deprivation and childhood trauma surrounding his father's disappearance. Callum stopped trying to convince them. What was the point? The evidence had vanished. His underwater camera contained nothing but static. Sonar readings from the boat showed no anomalies. Even the coordinates that had appeared on his mirror were now just random numbers without meaning. The world had already decided what was real and what wasn't. Only Shaw believed him. "The sea keeps its secrets," he said during a hospital visit, "and those who know them." "It's still out there," Callum whispered, "watching, waiting. It always has been." Shaw placed a folder on the bedside table. "Your father's original research. I've kept it. Safe all these years." Callum's hands trembled as he opened it. Inside were detailed notes, sketches, coordinates, decades of investigation into disappearances around the Flannan Isles, and similar locations across the North Atlantic. There are patterns, Shaw continued, places where people vanish more frequently, times when the boundary thins. Boundary between what? Between what we understand and what we don't. Shaw's gaze drifted toward the window, where rain streaked against glass. Your father believed these observers have always been here, studying us, collecting specimens, using structures like lighthouses as conduits because they stand at the edge between land and sea, between safety and danger. Why doesn't anyone know? Why isn't this public? Would you believe it? Would anyone? Shaw shook his head. Besides, some things are better left unknown. Knowledge has a price, Callum. Your father paid it. The lighthouse keepers paid it, and now you're paying it too. What price? Being watched, always. Knowing you're never truly alone. Shaw's voice lowered. They've seen you now. They won't forget. Months passed. Life attempted normalcy. Callum returned to work, though no longer in marine archaeology. He moved inland, away from the sea and its whispers, tried to forget. But at night dreams came, not of drowning now, but of watching, of eyes behind glass, of his father and the lighthouse keepers, preserved forever in transparent prisons, waiting, observing, learning. Sometimes he woke to find his mirror fogged, though the air was dry. Numbers written in condensation, coordinates changing regularly, as though tracking movement. Sometimes the pipes in his apartment walls hummed with that same rhythm. 3 beats, then 2. A code he understood now. We are still here. We are always here. Callum mapped the coordinates, creating a pattern across Scotland's western coastline. Moving, searching. For him? For others? He couldn't be certain. Only one thing remained clear. What had happened at Flannan Isle in 1900 wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of something larger, something ongoing. The disappearances continued. A fishing boat off Sewell Skerry in 1997. 2 marine researchers near St. Kilda in 2004. A family sailing near the Monach Islands in 2018. All vanished without trace, all officially attributed to storms, accidents, human error, all lies. Because the truth was too impossible to acknowledge, that something ancient watched from beneath the waves. Something that collected human specimens like butterflies, preserving them in eternal observation. Something that had been doing so for centuries, perhaps millennia, and would continue long after those who knew the truth were gone. Flannan Isles, present day. The automated lighthouse on Island Moor requires maintenance every 6 months. Today, technician Sarah Lawson makes the journey alone, helicopter dropping her on the helipad before departing. She has 6 hours to complete. Diagnostics before pickup. Standard procedure? The island feels smaller than she expected. Barren. Wind-scoured. Yet somehow occupied, despite its emptiness, as though the very rocks watch her movements. Inside the lighthouse, modern equipment has replaced the old mechanisms, though the structure itself remains largely unchanged. Sarah moves methodically through her checklist, trying to ignore the sensation of being observed. Just superstition, she tells herself. Everyone's heard the stories. 3 beats on the wall startle her, then 2. Rhythmic, deliberate. Hello? She calls, voice swallowed by stone walls. Is someone there? Only wind answers, moaning through crevices. Yet when she returns to her equipment, something has changed. The computer screen displays coordinates, numbers she didn't enter, and beneath them, a message. They're still watching. They're still here. Listen to the wind. Sarah tells herself it's a prank. Previous technicians playing jokes. She deletes the message, continues working. But as daylight fades, she hears it. Voices carried on the wind. Not words exactly, more like presence, awareness. From the window, she sees movement on the western landing. A figure stands at the edge, looking out to sea. Then another, and a third. 3 silhouettes against darkening sky. Her radio crackles. Through static, a voice, distorted but clear enough. The light keeps nothing away. It only helps them see us better. Sarah backs away from the window, from the voices, from impossible shadows where no one should be. The helicopter won't return for hours. Outside, the wind rises. Inside, pipes begin their rhythm. 3 beats, then 2. We are still here. And somewhere beneath the waves surrounding Eilean Moor, ancient eyes open, watching, waiting. The collection continues as it always has, as it always will. The observer beneath never sleeps, never forgets, never stops learning. And those who discover its existence join the others, suspended between moments, between breaths, preserved as specimens of human curiosity. A warning unheeded for generations. Some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved. Some watchers are meant to remain unseen. Some lights are better left extinguished. Because in the darkness between stars, between heartbeats, between thoughts, they're still watching, they're still here, and they've seen you too, now that you know. Listen for the rhythm. 3 beats, then 2. They're trying to warn you before it's too late.